Om Sadashivasamārambhām Vyāsaśaṅkaramadhyamām Asmadācārya-paryantām Vande Guru-paramparam Shrutismriti-purāṇānām Ālayam Karuణālayam Namāmi Bhagavatpādam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankarācāryam Keshavam Bādarayanam Sutra Bhāsha Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So continuing from our previous last week's class on Bhakti, we saw at a very high level different types of Bhakti. There's something called Parabhakti and Aparabhakti. So Parabhakti is the highest form of worship, where in Parabhakti there is no other things are worshipped other than the Bhagavan. In Aparabhakti, usually it is accompanied by something called Sakama Bhakti, or Sakama Bhakti means that which is always connected to a desire, connected to some fulfillment. And also Ragatmika Bhakti, also we saw. Then Vyabhicharani Bhakti, they are all coming under one category of thing called Aparabhakti. So the Aparabhakti, the people who follow that kind of a particular Bhakti, they are either in the beginning stages, or they have just been introduced to some sort of worship. So they are not very clear as who the Bhagavan is. But it is better to do this instead of not doing anything. So again, the Bhakti people also are categorized into different levels of understanding. So Adama Purushaha, people who do not do anything at all. For them, waking up in the morning, doing the activities, going to office, coming and having tea, coffee, watching some TVs, and then just going meeting friends and go to sleep. This is Adama Bhakta. They do not have a concept of any gratitude or worship, or they do not have a routine. So there is no place for Bhagavan in their life at all, because they are the people who take it for granted that everything here is for enjoyment, and I am here to enjoy. So this is the concept of the Adama Purushaha. So the Madhyama Purushaha is the one we are talking about as the who fills the Apara Bhakti. So the middle person, that is, he is neither Uttama Purushaha nor Adama Purushaha. He is in between. So this person has got some faith in the Bhagavan, some faith, some rituals. He does not know all of them, but he has got some Ishta Devata, some Kula Devata or Grama Devata, Vastu Devata, whatever Devata you worship. They follow the particular tradition. Then they offer rituals, worship, prayer, etc. Such people do not like other types of bhaktis. So the people who follow this kind of bhaktis, they do not like, or they do not consider, or don't want even go into other forms of bhakti, which is Nirguna Bhakti, or Nishkame Bhakti, Avyabhicharani Bhakti. They do not want to go there because they do not consider important. For them, they are happy with what they are. This is what is, according to them, Bhakti means. So even if you go and tell them that Bhagavan is actually seen everywhere, he is present everywhere, he will ask you a question, show me where the Bhagavan is. He will ask you the question also. Because For him, the Ishvara or Bhagavan is located in a particular place, particular time, and is denoted by a particular object. So this is how he understands what bhakti is. So they are heavily into rituals, heavily into pujas, pilgrimage, those kind of things, which is all limited in time. Then we have, so these people also follow mostly the 9 different types of bhakti. So first of all, see, in the Bhagavatam, it is said there are 9 different types of bhakti followed. It's called Navada Bhakti. So Navada Bhakti means 9 different types of bhakti or devotion being followed. So it is an expression of our love or of our feeling towards this almighty present there, who is responsible for the Srishtikarta, Palankarta, one who is protector, who is a preserver, the one who is preserving the universe, and also Samhara Murti, the one who is responsible at the end of the Mahapralaya, when all the jivas become enlightened. So, there will come a time when all of us will have to get educated. So, some people are ahead, some people are not started yet, some people have started, but they are at the bottom of the ladder. So, you climb step by step, and it can take many generations, many births can take. So, eventually, when all of them get resolved, when the particular kalpa, when the yuga is also, Maha Yuga is over, at that time, the whole Srishti will again come back into it. So, in between, these people perform bhaktis which are there. I'll just highlight to you. First is called Shravana Bhakti, Shravanam. So, Shravanam means listening to the glories of the Bhagavan, stories, enacting plays, listening to Upanyasam, etc. So somebody is giving a discourse on Bhagavatam, or somebody is giving a discourse, a short discourse on some topic which is connected with these aspects, or the glory of Rama, you can say, or glory of Lakshmana, Hanuman. So all these things are short topics, are short. They keep listening to these kind of things, because that is what they are able to connect. So this is one type of bhakti, is by listening to the glory of the Lord. So the Lord, as you know, is depending upon the person's interest and which particular culture he comes from. Different people have different Bhagavans. Some will have similar Krishna, some will worship Rama, some will worship Hanuman, Jhulelal. So Jhulelal. Sindhi people worship Jhulelal. So for them, so there are different people who worship different types of God. So, and they just follow the story without just direct listen. It's called Shravana Bhakti. And in the Shravana Bhakti also, the person is mature enough, little bit. He starts to question. Then he consults, or he or she talks to his guru and finds out what is this being said about this glory of Rama. Who is Rama? Was he living like this? Was he a person like this? So this is consulted by the student, by the listener, after he has listened many times, and he is still not sure about what this is. So these questions will arise. Every time Rama did this, Lakshmana did this, Hanuman did this. So it is good to listen. But was such a person existing? Such a Purusha was there or not? And how was he like? So these questions will come at some point of time. So repeated Shravanam, what it does is it actually kindles your thinking. So this type of bhakti is also recommended. So in Shravana Bhakti, the people who are performing, they are all the apara bhakti. So they perform, they follow bhakti about listening to the God, Bhagavan, etc. The leelas, so miracles, all these things. It is better than not doing anything. At least you go to the temple. Like when I was very young, very, very small, maybe 7 years old, 8 years old, I used to, mother used to take me to all these Upaniyasams. And I had listened this right from young age. So different people will come, and then they will give some talks on different aspects. It will be, usually it will be after 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 7:30 p.m. They go to temple there. And until 9 o'clock, there will be some Upanyasam will be there. It will be topic on, Rama Pattabhishekam, or, the coronation of Lord Rama. So how Rama got coronated. So in that context, the story, the ultimate end is this. But before that, all these stories which are there, it is continued over a period of time. So every day there will be some small part will be talked about. Sometimes I used to go to sleep in the mother's lap because very young, 7, 8 years of age. I may not remember so. What I'm trying to tell you is these things start at a very early age. So sometimes this also helps a person in developing. So Shravanam also is a very important thing, and even in Advaitam also, or Vedantic teaching, Shravanam is one of the most important things. You should have the capacity to listen without interruption or having focused mind. Because when you go to these lectures also, you do not talk there, correct? You just keep listening, correct? You will keep on saying something. You cannot raise a question there and say, I have a question. Because his purpose is what? Is to give a lecture on a particular topic. So what do? You sit there, listen, you absorb what you want to absorb. Whatever you think is not relevant for you, you discard it or you don't consider it. But you listen quietly there. So the Shravanam helps you. This bhakti will help you to focus your mind on one aspect. So very important aspect is Shravana bhakti. Then the people who are good in singing bhajans, kirtans, etc. Those people they are part of some group. So they sing the praise of the Lord by singing bhajans, kirtans, or they are part of a group who travel together. So they call mandali. Bhajana mandali. So mandali means like the people who are connected together. So they all go together in some place, common interest. Oh, there's a chanting going on in Lakshmi, what do you call, Vishnu Sahasranama. So these people belong to the particular group. So they'll always go into a particular group, they chant and they sing the praises of Bhagavan. Like there are different groups are there. One person may be in all groups. One person may not be in other groups. He'll only go to this group, depending upon the interest. Right? So Kirtanam means singing the names of the Lord. And what does Kirtanam do? Like Bhajana, what does it do? By singing the name of the Bhagavan all the time, by saying the name of the Bhagavan, it helps you to focus your mind. Because when you are involved in an activity, your mind is actually busy only doing that activity. But there are also people who are busy while chanting or while doing kirtanam. They also look around, they wander around, they look at here and there, they look here, there, they look behind who is come there, is a doorbell ringing or not. Or somebody may get up and say, do you want water? There are also people like this. So we are not talking about those people. Hope you know, see, sometimes the people don't twist on, they're not focused, right? They cannot sit there for 40 minutes, half an hour. Even the younger children who come to my class for chanting, they are only 13 years, 14 years old. They cannot sit for 15 minutes because restless, agitated mind. They will sit straight I can sit for 3.5 hours like this, I can talk. But even the kids of that age, 13 or 14, they cannot sit for that long. They stretch their legs, they will do this way, they will get up halfway, go drink water, come back after 2 minutes, they want to go to the toilet. All these are actually all, they are not required. Like when you come to the class, when you come to a you should be prepared. So you must be prepared to spend that time only for that particular day. You must not have anything else on the agenda, anything else should be there. That is what this Kirtanam does. Kirtanam is what? Like you go and sing or do some chanting there. In that time, you should be only with the chanting there. So Kirtanam means just not means singing bhajans. It also means chanting also, saying prayers, whatever stotrams you know, they're all there. Right? And Kirtanam, some people also, they bring instruments of music. They give, somebody will bring tabla, someone will bring harmonium, guitar. So modern people bring guitar. Like I went to one of this Arasamaji, I think they have a bhajan. They call me sometimes. So when I go to them, they have havan. They perform havan sometimes. So in the perform havan, they have this bhajans. So one of them has got a electric guitar. So he will play some tune on the guitar. Somebody will have a tabla. And one guy will say some sing. So this is all part of that, getting yourself connected together and being busy. So the Kirtanam involves all these activities because everybody comes from different fields of interest. And not all of them are interested in chanting. They come together because they have a skill, particular skill of, playing a tabla. They say, oh, you can play tabla very well. Why don't you come and join a group? We are having this bhajan and it will just make us, more interesting. So he gets connected. And when he comes to the particular group, he listens to, because even though he's playing with his hand, his ears are open. So singing, he listens to things which are there and naturally an interest develops in the person. So now he doesn't come for actually playing tabla or the harmonium or mridangam. He actually comes for both. He comes for listening and he also comes for playing also. This is how Kirtanam contributes, bhajanai contributes. So when you sing bhajans, etc., you also pick up a few things. Then the third thing called smaranam. Smaranam is third type. So smaranam means remembering the God at all the time without interruption. So there are some bhaktas who will keep on rolling their, japmala. Japmala, right? So they'll keep on, if you talk to them, they will not say anything to you. If you go and talk to them, you say, hello, Mr. Kushal, how are you? He will say, he will just say like this, So, because he's rolling that one. So he doesn't want to talk. And half the time only eye contact or, it will be there. Because there is some mantra Diksha mantra has been given to them. But also rolling the pin also is possible that like when rolling, you will be busy, looking at something else also. So this will keep on going on, in the pocket or something like this. Somebody will say Ram, 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 he will keep like this. And then he will, when Ram comes, the phone comes, the Ram will stop. And then he will answer the phone. Then again, he will go back to Japmala, Ram, Ram, and he will come. This is not what is recommended here. Here it talks about Smarana Bhakti means at that particular time, if you are doing meditation, let us say you are going to perform Japa. So this talks about Japam, where a particular image or an object is invoked and you are sitting in one place and you are just chanting the name of the Bhagavan, continuously closing your eyes without any disturbance. So at that time, your mind is only with the Bhagavan, only with what you are chanting and only with the mantra. You may not know the meaning of the mantra, that's a different thing. But at that particular point of time, it will be only the Bhagavan will be there. So Lord Hanuman also. If you look at Hanuman also, Hanuman all the time he was actually only Sri Ram. Right? You talk to him, Jai Sri Ram. Because similarly, there are also people who are Hare Krishna devotees. So when you talk to them, they will say Jai Sri Krishna. They feel like this. You see this? So Jai Sri Krishna. It means what? Krishna is two. So they will show this finger. It means what? There are two people there. Right? So Krishna and his Bharya. Two. So you'll see them. So they are Dvaitis. They will not show this because they cannot see Krishna as one. They will always see Krishna and his wife together. So you see this also. So this is also a symbol of understanding who they are and which sect they follow. Hope you're getting the clue, right? Because you meet these people and you'll see by hand itself that they say, hello, how are you? I'm good. It means they see Krishna. So in Krishna and Bharya is there. So they belong to this kind of sect community who are following this particular bhakti, which is what Shravana Bhakti, Kirtana Bhakti, and Smrana Bhakti. So they are always thinking about a particular aspect of what it is. Then the fourth is called Pada Sevanam. So Pada Sevanam means a person who like to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. So Padam means the feet and Sevanam means the person who likes to serve at the feet of the Lord. An example you can see also is in the Ramayana when Rama goes to exile and Bharat could not bear the separation. So because Bharat being such an ardent devotee of Lord Rama, Bhakta of Lord Rama, he could not comprehend sitting on the throne without Rama being there. So what did he do? He kept his slippers, Rama's sandals on the throne, on the side, on the main throne, and he was ruling the kingdom as though Rama was there with him. So it's called Pada Sevanam, or some people like to perform work at the temple also. They like to do activities for the Bhagavan, Abhishekam, etc. They do. They like to be at that always the same place. So these are called Pada Sevanam. Then number 5 is called Archanam. Archana means offering flowers, offering any sort of puja you do, where there are different types of offerings are being offered. So if you go to the temple is that in Gujarat, there's a temple, I forget the name. They have Chapan Bhog. So Chapan Bhog means 56. Correct, Kushalji? 56. Chapan means 56, right? Okay. So Chapan Bhog. Bhog means offering. And 56 different types of offering is given to the Bhagavan on that particular day. So it can be different types of food, sweets, laddus, pedas, all for the Bhagavan. It is a very famous temple, and I think the name will come to me later on. I went there a long time ago. Maybe when I was 24 or 25, at that time I would have probably gone to the temple there. But in the temple, they perform this kind of rituals, and also the people who perform abhishekams at home. So some people have got a ritual of performing every day abhishekam at home. Like if you got a lingam or a shivalinga at home, so they will perform, put some water, put milk, and say some mantra, offer flowers, If you're doing Ekadasha Rudram, somebody has got time to do that. So they perform Ekadasha Rudram, 11 times Rudram they chant. And 11 times Rudram, there are 11 items different items are being offered. So every Abhishekam you do, every Rudram you do once, you offer one particular type of Archana. Starting with, Vibhuti, sandalwood paste, honey, including, cow urine. So everything is, there are so many elaborate things are there. So every Abhishekam has to be done this. Then the sixth one is called Vandanam. Vandanam. So Vandanam means to pray and prostrate before the God. So wherever you go, any temple you go, any place you see the photograph of Bhagavan, this person will fall flat. And he will say some prayers. So he does not distinguish between whether Rama or not. He sees there's a Bhagavan there, he'll just go fall flat and the namaskara. This is also another way of remembering Bhagavan. So any temple you go, any sadhus who come there, any big Mahatma who comes there, this person sees that he is somebody who is actually better than him, and he or she worships in this manner. So it's called Vandanam. It's also another form of bhakti. And the seventh type is called Dasyam. Dasyam means I'm always a servant of the God. So his only objective is to fulfill all the services required for Bhagavan. So these people are actually all service-oriented people. That means they need not be at the temple all the time, but they are part of the committee of the temple committee. So if you look at a temple, it will have, or Bhagavan's place of worship, it will have many things to be done. Someone has to go and clean the temple premises. Someone has to go and clean, the toilets, or you may have to, make garlands, or, when there's a function there, one has to help. So all these things are all dasya, or they are always be committed das activities. Service to the Lord. So dasya bhakti. So people like Kabir, they're all dasya bhakti. Meera is also dasya bhakti. So she was only serving the Lord only. She was always, I'm a servant. So whatever you need from me, I'll do. So if somebody tells you do flowers today, she will do flowers. Tomorrow you're required to serve in the canteen, do some work, I will go and do the job. So this person doesn't have any particular role or particular thing. He thinks this is also an important attitude. See, all these are, so what I'm trying to tell you is, to move towards the Ananya Bhakti or Para Bhakti, these are all required. Without this, you cannot even get anywhere. You are better to perform these activities, or you fall into this category, and you should be proud to be called a Bhakta. You can earn the name of Bhakta and there's punyam for you. If somebody tells you, oh, you are Dasya Bhakta, so what? At least I'm that Bhakta. Instead of calling nobody, oh, you don't know anything at all, I'm at least serving the Bhagavan. So we should be happy with that. So this is all the steps, the seventh is Dasya. Then the number 8 is called Sakyam. Sakihi, Sakha, Sakya Bhakti. So here, the Bhagavan is not seen as a servant, as somebody who's very above. He is not somebody, this person, he is a friend. So you develop some sort of friendship with the Bhagavan. Example, Arjuna and Krishna were friends. Even though Krishna was somebody higher above everybody else, he's called the Parama Guru, or Jagat Guru, who we call him. But Krishna and Arjuna, they were friends. So that is why Arjuna was able to talk to Krishna just like anybody else. Otherwise, the Guru-Shishya relationship is something different. So there are some boundaries, there are some things which you have to follow. But if you are a friend, then you do not have anything, any anubandha. There is no particular limitation that you should do only this. Okay. Same way also, all the Krishna was also friendly with all the the cowherds. People who are they are all managing the cows, etc. All the gopis were all their sakhas. So this is also another type of bhakti where you do not see the Bhagavan as somebody, oh, you are my friend. Sometimes we do, you're not doing anything for me. Right? Sometimes we talk like this. Oh, you are the Bhagavan. And I'm asking you this. Can you do this? Krishna and Sudama. See example. Sudama is actually what? He's a friend. But he's a person who was very poor, correct? And Krishna was a king at the time. But sometimes, when poverty comes, the friendship also sometimes doesn't come. So you'll think, oh, he's a rich person, if I go to him, what will happen? But if the friendship is, 100% correct, and if they have a proper relationship, sakyam, then these things will solve automatically, it will come automatically. So, this is also another type of bhakti, sakyam. So, where the devotee has got a connection with the Bhagavan as a friend, not as anybody else. So, it is one step closer, because you can ask anything what you want. So, you're not afraid of asking him because you know that he's a friend, he will not hurt me. After all, what I can ask him? He's a friend. I can talk to him. So, you are disappointed, you don't feel bad, you go and talk to him and say all your grievances, say and tell him. That way you say that, look, I told everything. So, Sakya Bhakti. Then, the last type of bhakti is Atma Nivedanam. Atma Nivedanam means this is the complete surrender of self-surrender to God. Here, in Atma Nivedana means what? The Atma itself is surrendered. Like, I am not other than you. There is nothing here belongs to me. Everything belongs to you only. You are the whole. You are the only one. So here, the Ahankara also is surrendered. See, in all the other things, there is a Ahankara there. There's a doorship is there, correct? Sakyam, there's a doorship being a friend. Dasyam, there's a doorship being there. Because I am the doer, you are the benefiter. So in all the other bhaktis you see here, excepting the last one, Atma Nivedanam, there it is a complete surrender, where you surrender to all the activity which you do above, everything else from 1 to 8, they all should culminate into number 9. So where you step by step, you mix all these activities to become a wiser person. Finally, you are blessed with, the grace of Bhagavan. So Atma Nivedanam is surrender to the Bhagavan totally. This is also Ananya Bhakti. Is it clear? So these are the general category of bhakti, and Narada actually has written a very beautiful treatise on this. In fact, yes, 84 verses are given, 81 verses are given. 9 times bhakti, and for 9 different types of bhakti, 9 different things are given there. How to worship 9 different types within 9 also. So the Narada Bhakti Sutra is also a complete text, which will, when we get time, we'll see. Some other time we'll see. But there also, he says As a bhakta, you must not do certain things. I'm just going to illustrate from the Bhakti Sutra what is written there. Number one, it says here, you must not, that is, it's a defect to recognize God as a deity or a principle. See this. Narada says that it is a defect or this doshaha, aparadaha, to see God as a deity or a principle. That means what? You must not see the Bhagavan as a deity or a principle, but you must see the Bhagavan as something which is beyond this. You must not discriminate bhaktas on the ground of their caste. So you cannot say that he's a different bhakta. Oh, he's some bhakta. I don't know about this. So you must not be discriminating any bhakta of any caste. So one may be Ram bhakta, one may be Hanuman bhakta, one may be some other bhakta. It doesn't matter. They all come under the category of one bhakta. So you must not discriminate. You must not regard an image of a Bhagavan as a stone or a sculpture or an image. You must not see the Bhagavan as a stone or a photo or something. So whenever you see the Bhagavan, you must not see, oh, it's just a photo only. But you must see that the image which is presented is the Bhagavan. So you must not just look at it as a photo only. So because in Bhakti, if you just take the photograph itself as only the photograph, then you're not doing anything great about it. You must slowly, you must actually see the photograph first, understand that this is Krishna is me or Krishna is this. Okay. So this is also not to be done in Bhakti. Then to consider the Bhagavad Gita as just an ordinary book. To consider the Bhagavad Gita as just a book. So it is not only a book, it is a Dharma Shastra. It's a Moksha Shastra. Have a high opinion about one's own self. That means I am this, I am doing service to the Bhagavan. I am supposed to be the superior person here. I go and do all this work. So I am actually at a higher level than everybody else. So this high opinion should not be having. See, in Dasya Bhakti, this person doesn't have this. He is a servant of the Lord. So whoever tells anything, he may be a top guy in a corporation. He may be an executive earning a lot of money there. But when you go and see such a person, he'll be sweeping the floor of the temple. Sometimes you wonder why is he doing this. That is because his attitude is to serve the Bhagavan, Dasya Bhakti. So when you see these people, you must not, criticize, or you must not think, oh, see, he's doing this. Because that is his offering to the Bhagavan. That is how he sees the Bhagavan. That is how he practices Bhakti there. Then, this is another interesting. You must not approach an image of God without washing one's mouth and cleaning one's teeth. See this. You cannot just directly get up from bed and go to the Swami room or to temple there just and do something there. See, in fact, one of them asked me a question long time ago. There was a question about doing Sandhya Vandanam in the morning. Sandhya Vandanam is a ritual for the people who done Upanayana. You know Upanayana means, right? So the thread ceremony, people have the thread ceremony and then they have. So there is a question somebody asked that some Shastras say that you can get up in the morning and just do Sandhya Vandanam just like that. You can stand there and do. You can wear pant and do. All these things people ask. Because when you are getting up in the morning, you are in some other dress. You are not in the traditional attire what supposed to do, correct? So you must be in your night dress. You must be, in some kurta, pajama, whatever is there. And you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth or something, and then you start doing this. In fact, Shastram says it is not, you must not do this because it's asocham. So any activity you invoke Bhagavan, any activity you do, Gayatri Mantra also is Bhagavan. So anything which you do has to be done clean. In fact, Dharma Shastram says that you have to get up in the morning, do all your activity which is supposed to clean the body, and then brush your teeth, take bath, wear vastram which is earmarked only for that particular function. You must not be wearing anything and then come anything. You must wear a particular vastram or which is clean and only used for the purpose. So this is all also part of the bhakti, because how bhakti means devotion. So unless you have the discipline, and the dharma shastra is not, dharma is not there, discipline is not there, you will not have the bhakti, you will not bhavana will come to you. You will just stand up and do whatever you want. So that is not also recommended in bhakti. See, this is a very big topic. It actually touches so many aspects of your life. The way of life itself is bhakti also. Your entire life is full of bhakti. How do you lead a life? How do you see the world? How do you see your people? How do you express yourself? How do you maintain yourself? All of them is part of bhakti. Because unless your mind is clean, unless your thoughts are clean, unless your activities are clean, you will not be able to practice bhakti at the highest level. So it is not something very easy. It's not enough to do some chanting work, something like this, but the whole system should be clean. That is how you develop the values which are required. Okay, so we have come to at least have an idea about what bhakti is. Right? So I can talk about it for another 3-4 days also, but our objective is not to do that. So hopefully you got an idea in the last 2 classes after this one, that you know what bhakti means, how deep the topic is. So this is enough for us to, at this level, to understand what it is. Now we go into the second aspect of that, which is called definition of a guru. So who is a guru? Is guru required? Can I lead my life without a guru? Or why should I need a guru? All these questions will come to somebody's mind. All of them, I'm pretty sure that all of you has got, even I had the same question also. Because somebody, strange person, you are going to trust. And you're not used to trusting anybody except in instincts. Because human mind, person is so confident. When you talk to somebody, say, I'm a self-developed person. I'm actually a self-taught person. So I don't need anybody's help. You got such a high ego or confidence about your own capability that you do not need anybody else in your life. And this sometimes can be a problematic also. See, you do not need definitely anybody else for a materialistic life, because pretty much you are the expert in that particular field. But when coming to the field of Atma Jnanam, or when coming to study of the Shastram itself, there is no teacher out there. There is no course out there where you can go and get a degree. You cannot go to any Vedanta degree course and say that is there any course called Vedanta degree? There's nothing like this. Because nobody can offer you a course. But they themselves are offering, they do not know the topic that much well. And it is certainly not taught in a university. So it is taught in a style like this, where there's a one-to-one connection with teacher. And the teacher also has come from a Guru Shishya Parampara. So first, let's understand the meaning of Guru. A Guru means a person who removes ignorance. So there are 2 words in this, Gu and Ruhu. Guru who? So the remover of a darkness is called a Guru who. What darkness? He removes the darkness of ignorance, jnana. Now, how do you, the question may come is, how do I know that I need a Guru? In fact, you will know only when you study, when there's a desire in you to learn. Till such time, you do not need anything. When there is a desire in you to understand about something about yourself, that is the time when you will stumble upon somebody. It is purely accidental. It is also, you've been praying for it, you have been searching for it. And it's not something that you go with a list in mind. I've got all these questions and I'm going to look for somebody who can answer the questions. You cannot post in Google forum and Google. A lot of people post in Google forum and Twitter and everybody else, and then find out who can answer the best questions. And then they do filtration and then say these are the gurus whom I can sort. It's not like this. It's not a scientific method. This particular thing is coming from your own heart, your own desire, and all the austerities that you do, the punyams that you do, the bhakti you've been doing, the karma yoga you've been doing, all these things are pushing, they're clamoring. And this is what actually brings forward a person who comes into your life as a teacher or as a guru, whichever you call it. And he or she becomes the person who guides you subsequently in every aspect of your life. Now, the guru itself is different types of them. So we've got gurus for dance, to the dance guru. See, we are easy to accept a guru for dance. Is it correct? If you want to learn dance or if you want to learn music, he's a music guru, maths guru, science guru, English guru. Right? All, any subject you say, there is a guru who we accept as the in total. So we don't question them because we need these people. And at that time, we do not question whether the guru is, I just need a dance guru. Without a dance guru, I cannot do anything. So there also, what do? You surrender in total to the guru, right? If you want music to be your prime forte, then you have to surrender 100% to the teacher. You cannot come to the teacher saying that I know some music about it, some ragam I know. And you cannot say, I think this can be done like this. You cannot talk like that. So you, at a very young age, you go there. As some people go at 6 years of age, 7 years of age as a music. And then they become, the teacher keep teaching them different things. For 12, 13 years, 14, 15 years, they learn. And then they do, they are dance, they do Arangetram also. After Arangetram, which is on the stage, getting on the stage and performing the first solo dance or the first solo music. So for all of them, we have gurus. But when coming to Atma Jnanam, we are not willing to accept any gurus. We have reservation, We have reservation. No, it's not required. We don't think about it at all. And we feel that we can cross this life, we can live this life entirely without having this gap. If a Shastram says that one must have a guru in life, one definitely must have a guru in life without having a person there who can guide you in this step. It is difficult for you to navigate at every aspect of it. The question is whether you're ready or not is a different thing. Because there are two things are there. One thing, readiness should be there. So we saw before also, adhikari we saw, right? The person is qualified. Adhikari means the person has got sadhana chatushtayam. A person who is prepared and is willing to learn and who has got a serious burning desire to learn, to know. So these are the things which are required And this is what will help the person to search or look for a person of that caliber. And there are also qualities required in a guru also. So you cannot just accept any person just because you like the person. There are teachers or gurus who are very good orators. They can talk very well. They can articulate very well. They can talk about a topic at the skimming level for many, many hours, talk about different types of things, introduce different ideas. And they can also say that it is my own style of presentation. So these people should be, you should think whether that's what I want to do. Whether the person has got tradition, number one. Whether the guru belongs to a traditional style. It's called parampara. So parampara is a tradition one is following. So whether the student or the teacher who's following has come from a particular parampara. So who is a guru, and is a guru still alive or not? So the person who was teaching should have learned directly from teacher live in flesh and blood. You cannot keep a photo of the guru and say that this is what I'm learning. Because one of the requirements is that you should have learned from a guru who has been living, who is a living person there, or who is currently living, or who has lived before, and you have been involved with the person at least once you listen to him. See, it is not that you don't need to listen all the lectures. You would have undergone some study to some extent, and you listen to him directly. So some people say, I got a Manasika Guru. So Manasika Guru means what? Somebody who has accepted somebody, in mind. So the person may not be even there. Because you cannot ask the person a question, number one. So if you have a doubt, who are you going to ask? Are you going to ask the recording? Are you going to ask the photo? Will the photo come back and answer to you? Will the teaching, supposing the teaching was there, supposing somebody has written a very elaborate commentary, Bhashya, and you are studying the Bhashya. You have doubts in the Bhashya. What will you do? Because it is a cryptic Bhashya, but the doubts are there, and this person is not there to ask. How are you going to solve the problem? There's nobody else. So somewhere you have to find somebody who can answer this question. So that is where the parampara is important, number one. The second thing is, the teacher or the guru you are following should not contradict your view. It must not be contradictory. That means it must not be your values, your opinions, or views should not be contradictory. Like you should not say that all is wrong. Everything assuming is all wrong. All humbug. Stop this. Start doing this from tomorrow. A lot of people who say this. You come to my lectures, you come to my this, you do only this, leave everything else. Don't do puja from tomorrow. Don't do this from tomorrow. You only offer, some mantra I'll give you. You do that. There are people. So you should stay clear of such people because it is something which you don't accept. You want something who is accommodative, somebody who can accommodate you in all aspects, who can understand what you are looking for, at the same time letting you continue with what you are doing, and then leading you from that step by step to see the fallacies or see the correct what you're doing. This is called correcting the vision, or accommodation is important. So the guru should not be a person who is contradicting your view. Okay. So you must feel comfortable, number one, the person. Also the The person should have come from parampara, that means he should have a guru before. And that guru from whom he has learned, he or she has learned, had a guru before. And that guru also had a guru before. So only in the guru parampara, there are 4 levels prescribed. Only in the guru parampara. See, Shivaha, Vyasaha, Shankaraha, then Guruhu. Sada Shiva Samarambam, Vyasa Shankara Madhyamam, Asmat Acharya Paryantam, Vande Guru Paramparam. See the prayer say in the meaning, in the beginning. So Shivaha is the original Guru. Right? Then Vyasaha or Vyasa means the one who separated. So the whole of the Shastram was one big lump. There was no separation. Then Vyasa came into the picture and then he said that my job is to, people couldn't follow anything. So he split them into 309 different types of, Vedas, Shakas, Upashakas, all sort of things. So we have 4 Vedas, 4 different types. So, 4 main Shakas are there. And even in Yajurveda also, Shukla Yajurveda, Krishna Yajurveda. So people can follow one particular line and they can at least stick to it. Otherwise, it is difficult for people to follow. So that's why we had Shivaha, then Vyasaha. Then Adi Shankara came after this. So Adi Shankara came after Vyasa because he used the text of Vyasa. Then he wrote Adhyatma Bhashyam for all of them. So whatever Bhashyam you see, whatever commentary you see, he elaborated, he made it easy for people to understand. He came and rectified a few things, philosophy which is wrong in Hindu philosophy. Then after that, from the Acharya, from Shankaraha, other Acharyas came into existence. So many Acharyas. So we worship the parampara. Vande Guru Parampara. So Vandanam means the prayer, worship to the Guru Parampara. So it's only in Guru we have 4 levels. So it's called Guruhu, number 1. Lowest level Guru, Parama Guru, second level, Parameshti Guruhu, third level. So Guru, Parama Guru, Parameshti Guru, and Parapara Guru. So Guru, Parama Guru, Parameshti Guru, and Parapara Guru. 4 levels are there. Just as Shivaha, Vyasaha, Shankaraha, Acharyaha. Correct? So Guru is equal to Acharya. And Parama Guru is equal to Adi Shankara. Parameshti Guru is equal to Vyasaha. And Parapara Guru is equal to Krishna, or you can say Shivaha. So Adi Guruhu, Jagat Guruhu, we call it. So it's only the Guru Parampara we worship for. In every else, if you look at Devas, right? You got Deva, Adi Deva, and Mahadeva. Only 3 levels. So it's only that's why Guru Parampara, Guru is given highest importance in literature. In our tradition, Guru is given the highest importance, and the Guru also has to be a person committed to what Brahmanishta. So this is a very famous verse in the Upanishad, Tad Vidyatam Gurumeva Avigacchati Samit Panihi. Means for Tad Vidyatam Gurumeva. So for learning that particular knowledge, Gurumeva. So you go to the Guru. Avigacchati means he runs. So he doesn't crawl, he doesn't say, I would like to go tomorrow. He just takes off, runs. Why running? Because in the olden days, he used to carry samit, the stick. See, samit is like a stick, dried stick. It is used in the yajna, in the havan. So whenever we perform in rituals, right, the brahmacharis used to use this stick with the offer into the fire. So when the stick is very, very dry, it will catch fire very quickly, correct? If the stick is wet or it is not wet, it is not dry, what will happen? It will keep on smoking. It will burn, but it will not burn quickly. It will smoke. Like sometimes you also do havan at home or homam at home, right? The person who's coming there, he will make sure that he brings dried stick so that it doesn't smoke and it burns quickly. If it doesn't, burn quickly, the smoke will be there, and everything else you're offering as habis, the rice, etc., it will not get cooked. It has to get, offered into the fire. It should be destroyed completely. There will be no trace of anything because the fire destroys everything. So abhigacchati samit panihi. So in the olden days, he never had anything to do. The student had nothing else to do. So he says, I am coming to you with a stick of a bunch of sticks in the hand, in the head. He will keep pull and run like this. Why head like this? Because when the knowledge of fire is rising in you, or when you want the knowledge to be, your head is catching fire. Right? Head is very hot. My God, I've got a burning desire now to know. It means what? Your head is very hot now, and in the olden days, when they keep the dry stick, it means it will catch fire. So it will catch fire means when knowledge is ready, or when you're ready, teaching will be very effective. So it will just catch fire just like that. So you do not need to wait for a long time. If you're not ready, and if you go to the teacher at that time, it may take you longer time to do. So you'll have to go through the process of waiting through. But if you're ready, then your knowledge will be just instantaneous. It will just catch fire. So tadvigyatam sa gurumeva abhigacchati samitpanihi. And who is a guru? Shrotriyaha, brahmanishtaha. See, shrotriyaha means the person who has listened to somebody before. Shrotriyam means the person who has listened to a teacher before. To such a person should go. You must not go to somebody who says self-proclaimed guru. I am a self-styled guru. So when you ask him, from where you learned, this is all my own ideas, my own philosophical ideas. I create my own things, and my abridged version of what I think is like this. So if somebody is quoting like this, or somebody is not quoting any Upanishad, somebody is not quoting any Vedas, then such a person you must do namaskaraha and tell that I respect you, I bow to you, but you cannot be my teacher. You don't have to say to him, you say namaskara, I'm very happy, everything is very good, I like you, and just walk away from the person, go to the next person who is ready. So your search should be in this manner. So even the quality of the guru also is given there. Then next one is what? Shrotriya is first one. Then Brahmanishtaha. So Brahmanishta means what? A person who is committed to pursuit of Brahman. Nishta means is a discipline. And Brahmanishta means a person who is committed to the pursuit of Brahman. Or Atma Vidya is called Brahmanishta. A person who is consistently pursuing the pursuit of Brahman only, talking about Upanishad, talking about Bhagavad Gita, talking about Shastram all the time, quoting from only those things. It is not quoting from somebody's personal ideas. You cannot say that this is my own idea of expressing things. He may use an expression or some example to make you understand. But that example itself should not become a text. You know what I'm saying? You must not write a text saying that this is my example and then this is my idea. See, when you write a PhD, what do? You write your own theory. And if your theory is based on some theory, some assumption is there, but you create your own ideas. In Shastra, you cannot do like this. If I teach you something, it is not right for me. So I must be teaching you only what is in the Shastram and what is the methodology. You may like, you may not like, you may follow, you may not follow, but that is what it is. So a person will not compromise the style of teaching, compromise the content in the text also, and he or she will give full knowledge without anything holding. See, a guru also should not be a person who can say that I think you know already more than this. So when a student becomes more intelligent, right, then it's a problem for the guru also. Supposing the guru is very threatened, unsecure, or insecure, you say, see, this person, if he becomes, he knows more than me, then he will have more followers than me. He will become a teacher, he will have more students. Then what will I do? I will have nothing to do. So this prevents sometimes a person from giving him, so he will hold back some things, or he will not tell you a lot of things. Such is not a guru. The guru should unfold everything in total, depending on the level of the student's understanding. So step by step you have to unfold it, but ultimately the knowledge should be complete. It is not possible in the first instance you will get a full dose. Like the doctor, when you go to the doctor, right? If you've got a condition, medical ailment, he will not give you medicine for next 1 month. Just because you got ailment. What he will do, he will give you first one shot to see if you're responding or not, right? Your body is responding or not, he will check first. If it doesn't respond, then he'll give something else. If you're responding better, he'll give you one more extra dose. So he'll continue for such a long time so that you recover and then you walk out like a free man. Imagine he had given everything to you. All calcium, potassium, magnesium, all injection he is giving to you to get quickly. Some people have fast food technology. I want to know everything. I want to know all these things immediately. I should get Jnanam tomorrow also. 1 month, some people ask me, if I give you 1 year, can I learn everything? I told him I cannot give a time frame because I cannot guarantee anything whether you learn 1 year or not. You may learn, you may not learn. But there's a time frame for this. It's like, if you go to doctor saying, can you cure me within one month? I'll come to you. Can I say that? He will say, I do not know. Unless I check you, unless I assess you, I diagnose you what the problem is, then you don't respond to my treatment. Then only I can tell you. So it is like a person coming and asking a doctor directly that you treat me in 1 month, otherwise I go somewhere else. He says, you go. So what it means is that Shastram also works like this. It actually works very slowly. But it works definitely for sure. It takes time, but it will definitely work. So the teacher also should be in a position to unfold it slowly, systematically. As you go along, your questions should get answered. Sometimes you'll pose questions, then you'll also get answers immediately because something would have been covered before. So you'll feel, oh, I think I asked the question, I think I covered it to some extent. So more is going to come. So this is Shravanam, and it's important. So I just started talking about Guru now. I haven't actually gone deep of topic yet. Next class, I'll complete this topic called Guru Who. We'll see more of this from examples given in the Bhagavad Gita and also in the other text about how important a Guru is for a person in the spiritual life. If you want to be a spiritual person, then you need to have one Guru minimum. Till you have become knowledgeable, you should stick to the person. See, it is like, a person who has got walking disability. What does it do? He has a stick, right? He holds on to the stick always. Even if you want to walk also, the stick will be just next to you, correct? It will be somewhere within hand's reach, where you don't have to walk very far to get to stick. So the stick is always in front of you near. So whenever you want, you hold on to stick. you start walking. So such a person, the guru is called a stick. So a stick is required for a person to hold on to it. So you hold on to the stick till such time you feel you can walk without the stick. After you are fully well, then you don't need to hold on to the stick. You can leave it. That's why even in the sannyasam also, you see the people of Dandam, they have the stick there. Some of the people, they have the stick. What it means is the stick is Dharma Shastra, they're holding on to it. You see the old sannyasis or the matas, etc. They walk with a big stick there. So the stick represents Dharma. The stick represents the Shastra. So as long as they are there, they hold on to it. The moment they feel that they are going to leave this world, their time has come, they leave the stick also. Because the stick also is a problem. It's an addiction. See, Vedanta also is an addiction. See, text also is an addiction, because when you gain knowledge, you do not need to hold on to anything. You don't need to hold on to Guru. No, I would like to hold on to the person. Because even he should be free also. The Guru also should go one day. Okay? Because you cannot keep holding on to the Guru forever. You should hold on to the Guru for the person till such time you need knowledge is there. But then you must continue to be serving the Guru. It's not that you just walk away, forget about it, and then you don't talk to him at all, or you don't respect him at all. Not like this. You have to still be in touch with the Guru, but at a different level. You offer services, you still listen lectures. Now you do not need any more, day-to-day guidance, because you are aware about it. So that is why very important. So the Guru-Shishya relationship continues till the person goes away. Then the Shishya becomes a teacher, because the student has already inherited the qualities, the methods of teaching, the listening, etc., how unfolding happens, and he starts to develop the skill. This is how the tradition of, without alteration, without changing text continues. So if you follow Swamiji's path, which is what I am following, you go to any lectures in the parampara, whichever place you go, who are devotee of that, same thing will be said. Same, they'll start same thing only. Purushartha Nishchaya will start, they'll start with all these things will start. They won't start anything without this. Because that is how they are taught like this. So they will not contradict anything. So very important to have that tradition, which we saw today. In the next class, we are going to see a little bit more about different types of Guru, and what does the text talk about. Some other text, they introduce some aspects of Guru, etc. Some mantras will be introduced to start with. Because following after the 2 classes next, we are going to enter into the level 2, which is called the fundamentals of Vedanta. So introduction to Vedanta will be over the next 2 weeks. Then we are going to go a little bit deeper, where we start to study some text. Then we'll talk about overall things, and there will be some text we'll introduce, and we'll start to see a little bit deeper into the aspects of Vedanta. Any questions from today's class? Anyone has got? Okay. Any question, Bhavaniji? You okay?
No, all good. Thank you.
Shriram, any questions from you?
All good, thanks.
Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Namaste. Shubhratri to all of you. So tomorrow I'll see you at 7:30, for the Purushasuktam Bhashya class tomorrow.
Sure, thanks. Shubhratri.